Hey everybody, welcome to another business edition of Practical Pet Chat. Lorin, how you doing?
I'm good, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I really I love this format that we're doing. I'm glad we've been getting some really great feedback from all of you out there. Really appreciate that. Keep the questions coming. Today's episode specifically driven by a question that we got from you all, and that is, how do you compete with so many other avenues out there that exist today, whether it's the social media side, whether it's the direct to consumer side, whether it's the big box stores, the big box delivery, online stores. And I really think from hearing from you all that this is actually one of those opportunity identifiers. How do you stand out from them? Lorin, you face this, succeeded tremendously. So I want to start with your thoughts and feedback on
Well, it's a dichotomy, really, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you don't want to compete. This isn't about competing. This is about creating who you are in your niche, where you're going to fit, what you're going to be about, what your philosophy is, what your footprint's going to be, uh, is going to hold. Um, and on the other hand, the reality is that there's only so much money, and consumers are going to different resources for different reasons. So, you and I have talked about the what makes Amazon successful, which, there's college courses on that. But if you narrow it down, it comes down to you can order anytime, day or night, never leave your house, and have it delivered with free delivery in a lot of cases. So the appeal, not to mention free returns, all that kind of stuff. So it's convenience. It's all convenience based. Um, but good luck calling your Amazon seller if you want to understand how a product's going to work on your particular dog, or, is this a suitable harness for my escape artist cat? And why? And, is this particular consumable, whether it's a supplement or a food or whatever, um, is it, how's that going to translate in their body? How are they going to do with it? What about their allergies? What about their sensitivities? What about? No Amazon seller, most Amazon sellers, because, there are some supplement companies that represent their own products out there, and some food
it.
companies. But most of them aren't going to have answers for that. And that's the whole point, right, of going into an independent store, is the relationship, is being able to dial things down to your individual need as a consumer, your individual animal, your individual issue, um, and also history. Because if I have a customer for 2 or 3 years, then I know everything about their animals. I remember conversations we've had. I remember what they've tried, what they were eating, what didn't agree with them, all of those kinds of things. And you you can't just get that online. There is definitely a need for online. I love that there are options online for people, because my group, I have people everywhere in that. And we've spoken about this before. They need to be able to get their products somehow. What I don't like about online is that independents think that's who they need to compete with. The only time you need to compete with big box and online is if you're in a price war, because with no overhead or with massive buying volume, it's virtually impossible to compete with that. So you have to come at it from a completely different standpoint. I never looked at any of that as competition. I did originally when they built a big box store a mile from my own store, and then they built that big box store's competitor a mile and a half from my store. I was like, well, crap, what am I going to do now? And then other little stores that were independents kept popping up. And I came to the realization that the only thing I could control was me. and my store and my footprint and my products and how we conducted business. So that became my only focus. I didn't care what someone else was selling. I didn't care what they were selling it for. No, I didn't price match. I knew that our value lay in our relationships and how we dealt with our customers and our product knowledge, what we knew about it, and being able to direct people accordingly. The conversations that we would have, I mean, consultations were daily in the store and being able to dial down that particular need. So I think that you have to be aware of competition. I don't think it's the focus ever.
Right.
And I'm alarmed by how much in retailer groups and things that I'm in, I see that become so prevalent. They're so worried about that. Now, having said that, the flip side of that is at some point you have to understand reality. For example, there is a large chain of stores across the country that are not pet focused, and they carry a huge pet section. And in that pet section, one of the things that they carry a massive number of is pet beds. And they turn them all the time and they're getting new ones
Yep.
in all the time. And so the very first time, in a retail store, pet beds aren't fast movers. They take up a lot of space, a big footprint. You don't get to turn that inventory at the rate of, say, like a food or a treat. So you want to be aware of how much floor space you're giving to that because it may not be worth it. It certainly became not worth it for me very quickly when I went to that big box store that I personally shop in, not for pet supplies, but for other things, and stood in the pet bed section and took screenshots of beds that were selling in that particular chain far below what my cost was from those same companies. And, originally I called up and I was pissy about it. How am I supposed to compete with this? This place is, not even half a mile from my store. And why would someone buy a bed from me that I carry from your company and then get it over here? And we're not talking about old merchandise. We're talking about merchandise that is semi-current, if not totally current. And the response I got was, well, we had an overabundance, or it didn't move like we thought it did. Okay, then how about you call all your indies first and offer them that pricing on those beds that you're going to give to this big chain and see if you can't support their support of you and move it that way. It became so quickly a recognized losing battle that I real quickly just wiped out my bed section and said,
Sure.
no, I'm not carrying beds anymore. It wasn't worth it. And, there's only so much you can do that with. Fortunately, other things move very quickly. And those box stores, they don't have loyalty to the brand. They're in for the quick hit.
Right.
The product is in for the quick inventory movement. But if you don't pay attention as a retailer and start to look for trends in those particular stores with those same brands over and over and over, you quickly will lose traction because in some cases, that's now the direction that some of these
Right.
companies are going to. And you see that
Sure.
with some toys and you see that with some other things. When I can buy a toy that retails in my store for $21 because it's an expensive, durable toy, and I know what my cost was on it, and then turn around and see it sell for $5.99 at that particular store, I am not a happy camper because I can't touch it for that.
Right. And I think the thing too, I've heard you mention it a couple times, and convenience will often win out, especially if there's a dramatic price difference.
Right,
So you've got to be aware of all of the things that you're mentioning, and then you have to counter that, not with, well, I'm going to cut my prices. That's not
right,
a business move. You've got to counter that more so with what am I bringing? What is my store about? And you just got to put yourself in the shoes of your consumer. Because one of the things that I notice too is because I'll see that we all shop at different places.
Right.
When someone says, "I had no idea that so and so was selling," I'm often surprised, and I'll say, "Well, like, wow, that's unique. You must be shopping online a lot because you're at your store too much." Fair enough. Give you the grace for that. However, the reality is when they come to your store, they know what they're getting. So, the big box stores, you know what you're getting because you can put your hands on it. But to your point, a lot of times it's that quick hit. It's not going to be there typically 3 months from now, 6 months from now. So you've got to make that business owner decision. Okay, I'm going to have a seasonality impact here because that big box store seems to roll out this and that. You kind of want to build yourself a little calendar of, hey, it seems like every February I see a big push on X or Y in the big box store. So maybe I'm going to rotate that area out, or maybe more importantly, as I'm looking as to what's going into that section, and this is something I did with one of my vendors, is I would say, give me the high end stuff that I know the big box stores aren't going to be putting in. Because if I'm going to devote that space anyway, I'm not going to chase the price down. That doesn't serve my business, doesn't serve my customers either. Give me that higher quality offering, and that's what I'm going to put in there in that slot. The secondary part of it is, and we were talking supplements, we were talking foods, we were talking toys, all that. I cannot tell you how many times, and it's not just the pet, this isn't a pet world thing, this is just overall. People order something and they go, I got this, what a great deal. And then you look and it's a knockoff, or it's not the same, or
Yeah.
it's about to expire, or it's this, or it's that. So that is a value point above all because we're dealing with beings here. And as a parent, I'm not buying expired products for my kids. It's just not happening.
Right.
Uh, and then you get to that knowledge side of things. Good luck finding that in a big box store. Good luck finding that many times in the online. So your customer is having their own expense time because they've got to do more research if they're going to go and buy in those things. And hey, what's the likelihood of this or that? And what I will say too is, and I know this, and the online places are trying to clean it up and all that. So I don't want to cast any aspersions, but I know there are companies out there where you can hire them and their product reviewers. Well, what kind of product review are you going to get when that's their business? So all of those things, at what cost to the pet parent, right? Now you don't have to throw all that in their face, but when they say, "Well, gosh, you're more expensive," why? Well, here's many of the reasons why. You know, I know
Well,
your pet. I know what works for your style. Because here's the other thing too, because I see those beds there. And what's interesting is for some pets that may be a good sized bed. You know what's really interesting? I'm going to own this. I bought a bed there recently, but not for Bella. I got it for our bearded dragon because okay, hey, let's have something soft and comfortable and warm for the bearded dragon. Um, so look, again, they're doing their business. Kudos to them. Again, I don't cast aspersions on any of the box stores, even the online stuff, because they serve and meet a need. But from the standpoint of, I want to make sure our friends, especially in the independent retailer side, really understand you're the difference. You're the difference. Your knowledge, your availability. I love you said also too, the harness, good luck. Does that harness fit? Oh my God, sizing on things is all over the place constantly. And what's interesting is 1 inch either way can make the difference between that being a comfortable fit for your pet or not. I want to put my hands on it. I want to really see, is that, or did they just guesstimate and say, oh, this is between 21 and 23 inches? 21, not what I want. 23, what I expect. And so I'll just say the quality control side of things as well is not like it is when it's coming into your store and you're putting hands on it. You're looking because you're not going to accept seconds. unless you're going to mark them as seconds, right?
Right.
Those other
Right.
box stores, it's in a box, it's in a huge bin, you
Yeah.
know?
I wish it came down to seasonality. That ended a couple years ago. Now there's no, unless it's a themed season,
Sure.
the average things that the average pet parent would be looking for, they're in those big box stores all the time. The the problem when you're an independent retailer is not losing your shit over it, because you're angry. You back a manufacturer, and your first response is that they did you dirty.
Right.
Because, I mean, nothing, if you're a good indie retailer, you're talking about the products. You're learning the products, talking about them, teaching them to your staff, telling clients about them, about them. They're not just marketing points. You know how they're going to translate in the kid. You know what's suitable, how things fit, how they wear, whether they're durable, all of those kinds of things. There was nothing in my store that I wasn't personally familiar with and could speak to hands-on. It's difficult to remember that everybody's just trying to run a business. I'm certainly not making excuses for those manufacturers. I've been down that road too. But we are now in a whole different world of everybody's trying to stay relevant and alive. They're trying to keep their business alive. And including some manufacturers, most manufacturers, cost of goods have gone up. They've got commitments. They've got to make turns as well. We become very narrow focused on our world because it's affecting us directly. The thing that retailers have to be willing to do is to make the tough decisions. For example, I see some of the brands at that particular chain of stores that I know are really well made, excellent brands. And if I still had my store, I would be removing those brands or never buying from them again because that's really your only option. You can't to call up and scream and rant and rave about it or to express your disappointment really goes nowhere. It further spikes your own blood pressure and ruins the rest of your day and makes it a bigger deal than it already is, which is huge from what you're experiencing. So you move on. And part of the way that I've seen some retailers do this, and I know I did this in a couple of instances, and I did it the first time I did it, I was like, and I did it more out of a spite kind of thing. And then I quickly realized the value of it. And you can't do it with everything, but I would go to this particular chain of stores, and there were certain categorical items that I knew I could get nowhere close to anything like what their retail was, even at cost. And so I'd go buy up what I knew would sell of whatever they had. And then I
Hmm.
turn around and mark it up. And by the way, mark it up for less than what I would originally mark it up for because, we're talking about Keystone in some of these things. And Keystone, by the way, for anybody who may not be familiar, is just taking whatever wholesale is and doubling it, which you do on certain items. It's a very common retail thing because, for people who may not be in retail and listening to this that are just consumers, before you think that anybody is ripping you off, there's overhead and there's, cost of goods and employees and rent and time on the floor and all of this stuff that has to be accounted for in that price. So if we're paying $4 for something and we're charging you $8 for it, that's a very common thing in retail. And just to put that further in perspective, some places are paying $4 for something and turning around and charging you 12, 16, $20 for it. So, you just have to decide whether, like in everything, whether or not it's worth it to you at that given price. Don't get bent about it. It's normal. But if I can turn around and sell an item that I would normally buy for substantially less than what I would normally have to mark it up for, I'm all over that. And I take it away from that particular chain of stores. So
Right.
now it's in my store. And does that help the manufacturer? Absolutely not. But I feel like the manufacturer should have contacted me first and said, "Hey, are you interested in buying these at this price?" You could very easily, in a day's worth of calls to a lot of retailers or better retailers who sell your product line, get the response of, "Hell yeah, I'll take 3 cases of that. I'll take 10 cases, whatever it is, depending on what the cost is going to be. It may very well be worth it to that retailer to engage in that. And there's a disconnect because everybody is so focused on what their needs are that and because of today's world, it's just easier for us to get ticked off about it and react than to think from a partnership, stance.
Yeah.
And to your point of things get knocked off. So in my group, I tell clients all the time, if there's no store around you to buy this particular thing, especially a consumable, a supplement, something like that, please buy it from the brand itself on that store, that Amazon store or whatever it is,
Right.
because the third party seller, you don't know how they got it, you don't know where it's been, if it's been in the heat, if it's been properly cared for, if it's been ripped off. A really good friend of mine who owns a supplement company had experienced that very thing where they were told either you're going to sell it on our platform or we're going to knock it off and
Oh
we're going to
yeah.
sell it. So I get that. You don't want your product knocked off because it then dilutes your product, right? It's not going to
Right.
work the same. It's going to be a bad look for you. It's a bad rep, whatever. It's all negative, whatever it is. So you might as well put yourself on that platform to do that. Now, I had an experience like that because I don't have a retail store right now and I can't get that product from anywhere locally that I called the brand who I had a former relationship with and said, "Hey, I need this product. Um, I was going to buy it on Amazon because I'm in a hurry for it and they'll deliver it tomorrow. But do you know anything about this particular reseller?" And she laughed and she goes, "That's us." And I go, "Well, why don't you call it your brand name?" She goes, "We didn't want to piss off our indies."
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, but I can't find it. Do you know, this was so interesting to me. It was a really short conversation. I wasn't upset. I was like, okay, good to know. I'm going to order it because I need it tomorrow. And I went back to do a reorder a month later and they had changed the name that they were using to their brand name.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought that was
Yeah.
super interesting. So, but
Yeah.
you have to take the extra step sometimes because you don't want to knock off product. And they knock off the label, they knock off the
Right.
bottle, they knock off all of the text, they
The
knock off the
description.
box, the descriptions, all of it. So you
Yeah.
think you're getting legit, you may not be.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I mean, I like I said, even outside the pet world, I bought things and I'll have the original straight from that original manufacturer and I'll get something in and I'll be like, that they didn't change there's always some little clue. The coloring is different, there's something not included that was included before.
Right,
Changes happen and that's what they're counting on, right? Is that you're not going to notice because you'll just figure, hey, it's just a different version of this. Packaging has changed, the color of the whatever has changed. I think the other thing that I'll just point out too from the vendor standpoint is, and I thought this was important when you said it, the relationship, to just reach out and say, hey, we have this opportunity. And all too often, the manufacturers are worried about, well, if I do it this time, they're going to want it every single time. If you have a good relationship, you can reach out and say, hey, we've got this opportunity. Are you interested? To me, that is so much easier of a conversation
right,
than going around everybody and then trying to explain afterwards, but you didn't even give me the chance to say,
right.
yeah, I can work with that, or no, I can't. And so for our vendors
Be-
out there that are listening, trust your relationships. And if you don't have the relationship, what better way to build a relationship than to start with, I've got this opportunity. I thought of you. And before we pivot anyplace else, I wanted to give you this opportunity. Those are the kind of relationships that I'm looking for.
Well, because when you're the vendor, what happens then when the retailer calls you? They're like, "Listen, I called you,
Yeah, yeah,
and I offered you that." But to your point of they want it every time, it's no different than when you're a retailer and you have a sale, and then somebody comes in and goes, "When are you going to have a sale on that again?"
exactly.
And it's like, next year, probably about the same time. Oh, well, I need it before then. Okay, well, here it is.
Right,
It's no
exactly.
different. I mean, it's exactly the same thing. A sale is a sale is a sale. This is the
Yeah,
regular price product. And a vendor can very easily say, well, when I have another one of those opportunities, I'll give you a holler. But until
yeah,
then, this is the price.
yeah. No, I love that. I love that. Well, so let me, kind of bring it full circle here. At the end of the day, you are the difference as the retailer, as the owner, as the knowledge base, as the service base, as the let's come in and verify this is going to work place.
Mhm.
That difference in cost and convenience is some folks may make that trade-off. But if you've shown your value and you continue to show that value, I gotta say there are very few products out there that I've experienced that would make me, for the price differential, not want to have for any of the beings in my life. My wife, my children, my dogs, bearded dragon, the tortoises, on down the line, because they're living beings. Cars and car parts and this and that and blah blah blah. Maybe, but I really feel, and I think, well, as we've been talking, it's that, yeah, you're the difference. You're as the store owner, as the store staff, you all are the difference. And convenience is in the eye of the beholder. Because to me, convenience is knowing I only have to buy the right thing once. I'm getting the best quality thing. Doesn't, pennies, a dollar here, a few dollars. That's not more important than any of the beings in my life. So, but I'll let you
Yeah.
wrap up on your side of it as well.
Well, you can call it out too. So I had an experience with customers that were in my store that I had helped many times with issues with their dogs. And I mean, free consults, lots of time. And they were in my store one day and they were hovering by a product line. And so I was doing my thing around and just sort of keeping an eye on them so I could answer any questions. And then I realized what they were doing. So I came up behind them and I just sort of stood there for a minute and I said, so exactly what is the price difference online? Oh, uh, well, I mean, it's $1. I said, so all of the help and all of the time that I have spent with you for
Exactly.
free, the consultations, the texting back and forth, the being able to reach out to me in the group at, at time, any time of day or night, that isn't worth $1 more to you. Just want to understand where we stand, you
Yeah.
know? And they said, oh, well, we're just, they really even couldn't stumble their way through it because literally it was $1
Right.
difference. And I was like, come on. It changed our dynamic
Yeah.
because it was like, okay, so that's how we're going to play this now, right? And from that point forward with those clients, like, so you're going to use all that you can get here and not support everything's a partnership, right? Everything's a relationship. It's a give and take. It's, if you're not getting the kind of support from a customer, then you're not inclined to want to spend a lot of time on that customer, right? Customers come in, they buy from you, you should be willing to give them the time that they need, the expertise that you have, the knowledge that you have, and do everything that you can because they're coming in to support your store. And it's the same thing from manufacturer to retailer, distributor to manufacturers, distributors to retailers, all of that. And price is not everything. It really isn't.
Completely agree on that, because I know we could keep going and we will. We'll have plenty of more chats. But I want to make sure folks know where they can reach out to us. Practicalpetchat@gmail.com. You can find us on all your favorite social media and other media avenues. Feel free, reach out to us. We would love to address more of the business questions that you all have. We're going to do it this way. We're not going to individually reach back out. That's a different way of how we do things.
Sure.
But Lorin, thank you. This is a great conversation.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who, tunes in and listens to us and takes the time to send in your questions. And we really appreciate it. It's fun.
It is. Take care, everybody.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as, nor should it be construed as, professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment for your pets. Always seek the advice of a qualified veterinarian with any questions you may have regarding your pet's health or medical condition. Never disregard professional veterinary advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The hosts and the guests of this podcast are not liable for any actions taken based on the information shared during these episodes. Any reliance on the information provided is solely at your own risk. Copyright 2025 Practical Pet Chat, all rights reserved. Unauthorized duplication, distribution, or reproduction of any content from this podcast, including but not limited to audio, scripts, and show notes, is prohibited without prior written consent. The opinions and views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Practical Pet Chat.